25-30, 35-40, 45-50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. Oh, no, they didn't. Oh, my gracious. Yep. How about that?
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is the day we've been waiting months for, Selection Sunday. Lots of drama over the last couple of days. A bid thief in Clemson, a lock in Boise, and yeah, Moose is already, if you're watching the live stream, Moose is already has his hands in the air. We're ready to break down the selection show. We're starting a little bit early so we can get a couple of takes in about the games from last night, but we got a full house today, guys. I'm really excited to be joined by Tyler Noe of Always Talking Ball, William Cockrell of the Walk On Red Shirts, Garrett Turney, and myself, Trey Reeves, here on the Three Technique. Happy to have you guys, man. This is one of the funnest days of the year for me. What are you guys most looking forward to today as we count down about 25 minutes till selection show starts?
Guys, I don't know about you. I've been talking about this for a couple of weeks now. I have been thrilled to see just how the committee is going to mess this thing up. I cannot wait to see the absolute tragedy that happens in seedings and rankings, and how we can clearly see right through it that it's all about ratings. That's not a football take, obviously. That's just a committee take. If it gets bad enough, they're just up in Grapevine. I can sneak up there and maybe have a couple words with them. So we'll see what happens.
I will say this was about 16 seconds from not being the most exciting day of the year. So
we were very close to not having Moose on the show today. We were very fortunate that a kick return got us your presence today this morning.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And my first floor almost turned into an open concept on that last touchdown. And then it almost turned into an open concept again on the game-winning kick. But I'm not gonna share too much until we get in there.
Yeah, Tyler, I know you guys are going to be doing your own live stream, so make sure to check that out as well. As you're flipping through college football coverage, I think we're going to do a pretty good job compared to the big network, the big four-letter network. So, Tyler, I'll get your take here first. The big discussion is going to be SMU versus Alabama. Who should be in? Who should be out? Where do you lean on that? Do you reward SMU for making the conference championship game, maybe despite some of their scheduling deficiencies? We'll use that word to keep it kindly. Or do you reward Alabama, who had a tougher schedule but definitely has the worst losses?
Yeah, Lance and I were at the Big Ten championship game last night, and he was watching the SMU Clemson game at the end on his phone. And I tweeted out right after. I mean, that was the worst possible outcome for Alabama right there, just an overtime game. They could say, oh, SMU, they didn't lose in regulation, or not an overtime. It was a possible overtime game, but a last-second field goal, basically. So I think Lance even said it on our last episode. He doesn't think SMU should be punished, and he's an Alabama fan. You guys know that. He doesn't think they should be punished. But in his heart of hearts, he's going to be comparing the resumes and everything. And everyone wants to talk about non-conference schedules, or just, these are going to kill the non-conference games or whatever. If you look at the non-conference schedules, SMU played a tougher non-conference schedule than Alabama. They played BYU. They played TCU. They played Nevada. All in all, that was a tougher non-conference schedule. They can't do anything about their conference schedule. Alabama can't do anything about their conference schedule. They can do something about the fact that they lost to Oklahoma and Vandy. So the whole notion that this is going to, just schedule the easiest possible game none of these teams were arguing about lost any non-conference games worth of note, except for Clemson, of course, against South Carolina. So,
yeah, I mean, Peter Burns kind of had the biggest tweet about this morning that I saw, that basically insinuating that the committee is going to have to make a choice between devaluing conference championship games if you choose Alabama, or devaluing strength of schedule. I'm with you though, Tyler. I don't think that if you're in SMU, you did the best that you possibly could in a transition year. And sure, you could have beaten BYU. Garrett and I were at that game. It was an ugly game. It was before they made the full quarterback transition as well. So just so many, and it was also all the way back in September, third week of the season. So it's hard for me to weigh that as equally given the extenuating circumstances, as I just saw Alabama not 3 weeks ago get blitzed in Norman, Oklahoma by a team that's barely going to get bowl eligibility.
Yeah, I agree. So personally, our take is what we think the committee is going to do is they're going to put SMU in. I think they're going to be the 11 seed. I think Clemson will be the 12 seed because Clemson's probably not going to jump up over SEC teams, especially South Carolina and all that. So they're going to be the lower ranked team. They'll be the 12 seed. But again, wouldn't shock us at all if Alabama got picked. I really don't think it would shock anybody. These are, like Garrett said with the committee, I mean, we're talking about ratings. And honestly, if we're, most people, if they're going to ask themselves, like, who would you rather watch in the playoffs, whether or not you want to, see good football or whether or not you want to hate watch, it's Alabama. Like, you want to watch them and you want to watch them lose. So what is the committee going to go by what you see on the field and the resume and all that? Or are they going to say, okay, who's going to get us more eyeballs?
Ooh, we got some hot takes already in the chat that it would be a pity party for SMU if they get in. Guys, I don't know. Like, having seen SMU in person this year, yes, the game against Clemson yesterday did not go their way. And yes, I mentioned the BYU game already. Is it a pity party for SMU?
I'm gonna jump in right quick. I like what he said at the end. SMU can't even beat Clemson. First off, I think if you watched the game last night, it is very clear that SMU could beat Clemson. Again, you play that game 10 times out of 10, they're probably going to come out with a couple of those. And this isn't to shade either team, right? This isn't to shade Clemson or try to make them sound like they're bad. This is just to say, if you watch that game, it's pretty obvious they could have won that game. If that kick comes up just a little bit short, they could go win that game in overtime last night. That exact game we've talked about. If you want to throw that back at Bama can't beat Oklahoma because I looked at them play Oklahoma and I didn't see a team that could beat Oklahoma in 10 attempts. So look, I mean, maybe they find a way in 10 attempts. They find a way to get better coach for that game, but they didn't beat them by anything close. And so, look, I don't know. It's the stupid part of the end of the season where we're now getting to compare SMU versus Bama instead of, I think the good part of, sort of the 12-team playoff, we've talked about this a couple of times, is that we're now having this conversation where realistically, I don't think any of us think that SMU or Bama is really going to compete for a title if either of them get in. Whereas last year we had to have the stupid conversation, of, hey, what are we talking about? Are we talking about an undefeated conference champion that lost their quarterback versus a very good Bama team that just won the SEC? We're not having that conversation. We're having a very different conversation now. So I don't know. I'm glad that we have the ability to have this conversation, that we're actually on 12. But it does mean that, yeah, some of these conversations are going to get kind of stupid. So, like, look, at the end of the day, both teams have some warts. Both teams are maybe not going to be, your perfect candidate. We're not talking about Oregon here. We're not talking about teams that have gone, the whole way of the season, not really looking all that bad. We're talking about a couple of teams that, yeah, they have some flaws, but who's most deserving? Again, in my opinion, it's got to be the team that hasn't really looked that bad this year, hasn't lost a game to, Oklahoma. Or Vanderbilt or someone like that. I think that you probably have to consider that.
Yeah, and I know the big argument, and we're already seeing it in the chat, is they would be favored over most of the playoff field. Well, how many points were they favored by against Vanderbilt and Oklahoma, guys? Like, let's not play this game on a spreadsheet. You're probably right. On a neutral field, all else being equal, absolutely Alabama is going to be favored over SMU, but you have to win the games they're giving you. You can't just expect 9-3. We talked about this a lot on our reaction to the rankings this week. This bubble, it's a lot like the college basketball tournament, right? Like, there's going to be flawed teams right there on the bubble. There's not going to be an objectively correct answer that you can say 100% of the time, this is the team that should get in. It's just going to come down to what the committee values. And if you're leaving it up to the committee, then you put yourself at risk for being left out.
Well, and I think too, if you want to talk about resumes and you want to take the spreadsheet route, the biggest difference in SMU and Alabama. Sorry, my kids are just as upset about these rankings as I am. The biggest difference is Alabama's margin of defeat was about 33 combined points. 2 of those being Oklahoma and Vanderbilt, 2 unranked teams. BYU's margin of defeat is by 2 top 20 teams, 6 points combined, both by field goals. So, I mean, if you want to talk comparison, and then when SMU can't control who they play, right? They can control how they play. When they were on the field against TCU, Pitt, Louisville, all these teams that gave other teams trouble, including Clemson, they smacked them down. They handled their business. They did exactly what they needed to do, and they've won in so many different facets. So I think you can't sit there and say that it's a pity party, because I think SMU is a very legitimate team. I mean, look at if the second half of that Clemson game doesn't happen, this conversation is much different. This conversation is completely different. If Clemson goes out there and beats them 48-14, like if you just mirror the 2 halves, we're not having this conversation. I don't think there's a soul out there that would say that SMU deserves to be in it if that's how it happens. But the second half happened, and it had to come down to a game-winning kick. So I don't think it's a pity party. I understand what you're saying, because, I mean, Alabama beat Georgia. Alabama beat LSU, beat the bricks off of LSU, beat the bricks off of Missouri, whatever you feel about Missouri. So I think it's too bad. It's like the Heisman situation where you have Ashton Jeanty and you have Travis Hunter, and they're both phenomenal football players, but whichever side of the coin you want to go on, you have to bash the other. I think SMU and Alabama are both legitimate football teams. I think they both have done a really good job this year, and it's too bad that we're coming down to this part where we have to talk bad about one of them to prove the other one's better.
I have an idea, guys. Let's just expand it to 13 teams, line them up in the Kibbe Dome, and play ball, and then the winner gets the spot. How about that?
But you know who there's not an argument for? Because I think they're going to get in no matter what. Y'all might not be expecting this from me, but I'm saying roll Tigers, baby. The Tigers are in no matter what. No matter what happens, we handle business. I know I'm sitting there talking bad about Alabama having 3 losses, but hey, there's one team in the land that's got 3 losses that's going to be walking into this playoff, and that's my fighting Dabo Sweeney's on our Roy Boys. It's cranked up. It's got the diesel fuel in there. Tyler Noe, he came over there with the diesel exhaust fluid, poured a little bit in there, topped it off for us. I appreciate it. We're rocking and rolling, baby. We're rocking and rolling. We're 0-2 versus the SEC, but we're undefeated in my heart.
Well, yeah, and if you can find a way to not play an SEC team in the first round, it might be a spot in a quarterfinal or a semifinal eventually. But let's talk about that game last night, guys, because I know Tyler's going to get out of here in just a few minutes to start his live show over on the Always Talking Ball channel. What were our main takeaways last night? Obviously, it could not have started possibly worse for SMU. They get down 21-7 before you can even blink, 14-0 before you can even blink, and fought back. Electric ending with SMU driving the field to score a tying touchdown, then giving up a kickoff return to set up the game-winning field goal at the gun. I'll confess, I was working a little bit late last night, and I had my earpiece in with the SMU radio broadcast. Felt so bad for those guys because it was just elation on the touchdown, and they just let dead air for probably 5 to 10 seconds after the kick went through, and you could just hear faint cheering in the background. You didn't know if it was SMU fans or Clemson fans, and they just said, and it's good, like after 10 seconds of dead air. So I'll turn it over to you guys. Thoughts on that game, what it means for Clemson to kind of rise from the ashes after how down they were a week ago against South Carolina to get into the college football playoff and have a puncher's chance in the first round.
Well, I'll let Moose handle that. I'll leave you guys with this. I mean, that SMU dead air was probably just the fact that it's not in their hands anymore, right? And they left it up to the hands of the committee. They started off that game from what we saw kind of on the Gamecast and stuff at Lucas Oil Stadium. I mean, started off rough. Turnovers, kind of like what plagued them in the Duke game. But credit to them. They fought back, and that's the sign of a good team. But again, yeah, like just that thought of knowing, all right, well, it's not in our hands. Are we going to get screwed over here? I don't know. So I'll leave you guys with that. I appreciate you having me on for a couple minutes. Yeah, appreciate it.
Tyler, real quick before you go, how was that atmosphere last night in Indy? I know there's a lot made about the get-in price of the tickets, but for me, if I was within 3 hours, I would have jumped at that opportunity at that get-in price.
Yeah, I think the get-in price was low. Similar. I mean, I think it was because both those teams are going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So you got to make a decision. And Lance had a couple of buddies from Pennsylvania who basically said, I'm going to save my money for a CFP game. So they didn't make the trek in. So it was still pretty full. It was probably 70-30 Penn State fans, a lot of white in there. They were noticeably louder than the Oregon fans. And we were sitting kind of on the Oregon side of the stadium. But man, just to watch Oregon in person, the speed that they have on the field, and we know Penn State's not the fastest team in the world, but the speed, especially Tez Johnson, just to watch him in person, just so fast, so incredible. And props to Penn State for keeping up, for keeping track. It kind of, left us with a couple questions on Oregon's defense, whether or not they're legit, but heck, they got an offense. Atmosphere was great. Game was great. Conference championship weekend was great. Can't wait for this playoff reveal here in a couple minutes. But yeah, appreciate you guys having me on.
Thanks for coming, Tyler. Tyler Noe of Always Talking Ball. Make sure that you guys check out their channel as well if you want awesome college football content that is so much better than what you'll get on the mainstream. Thanks again, Tyler.
Agree. Appreciate it, guys.
See you, Tyler.
All right. So back to SMU Clemson real quick. Let me clear my throat. Got a long show in front of us. We got to pace ourselves here. Back to Clemson SMU. It just could not have possibly gone worse for SMU in that first half. I texted in our group text for 3Tech. Man, SMU is going to get left out if it looks like this, because it was not good for them in the first half. But got to give them credit for battling back and making that an all-time classic ACC championship game.
Yeah, that was a phenomenal football game. And, the first half, Clemson had to win in so many different facets. I mean, we start off hot. We scored 21 points in the first quarter. The offense goes stagnant. The defense steps up and plays phenomenally. It looks like, they have 31 points. They didn't play that great. I thought the defense looked pretty good. There was some things I didn't really care for, but I thought overall they looked pretty good. Then the special teams. And how poetic is it that the team that leads the country in field goal blocks allowed wins the ACC championship on a 56-yard field goal with a true freshman, with the confidence to look at the camera and wink. I mean, before he goes and kicks, he looks at the camera and winks like he hasn't had 94,000 kicks blocked this year. So hats off to that dude to being just unfazed by all the bad things that's happened this year. It's like, I mean, just that's just credit to his mental. I mean, kicking is mental. It's so mental. We see these guys in warm-ups kicking 70-yard field goals, and they go out there and you put some people in front of them and then they start shanking them. It's mental. So for a guy to be able to have that kind of moxie to him in his hometown in the biggest game at a game-winning kick, just phenomenal. But I think the game came down to the biggest thing, and I talked about this last week on our podcast, Walk on Red Shirts, and I talked about it on Twitter. Running the football. Clemson cannot do it. They ran the ball 32 times for 64 yards yesterday for an average of 2 yards per carry, which is about what SMU's been doing to everybody. They've been allowing 2.8 yards per carry, which that's going to come down a little bit. Could not run the football. Phil Maffa's been hurt since about the Virginia game. He looked like a shell of himself. If I see them pitch that ball to the outside with him again, I might lose my freaking mind. But in a game in which Cade Klubnik had to put the team on his back, he did a great job in the first half, left some meat on the bone in the second half. There was a couple throws, missed a touchdown to Bryant Wesco. Bryant Wesco could have had a hat trick. Overthrew Antonio Williams a couple times, missed a couple wide open receivers, but that happens. I mean, when you have to throw the ball 41 times in a game, you're going to make some mistakes. But overall, I thought the team looked really good, except for the fourth quarter. I think the fourth quarter was the biggest bugaboo. Clemson hasn't played a full game all year long. You talk about App State. Well, all the starters get pulled in the first half. So that was the opportunity to finally play a full game. They didn't do it. NC State, they played a great first half. They don't really do anything in the second half. They scored 7 points in the second half. You talk about Georgia, played a great first half defensively. Nothing in the second half. You talk about Pitt, played a good fourth quarter, last minute, pretty good first half. You talk about South Carolina, good first half, blow it in the end. So, I mean, SMU, same story. We get to halftime. I'm like, I'm not sold yet. It's a 17-point lead. We've blown this. We've blown this every week this year. So, hats off to the defense for getting it done, but not when we needed it to happen. I mean, special teams had to end up taking over this game. Literally, the game was won by the offense in the first half, the defense in the second half, and the special teams in the last 3 seconds.
All 3 phases, just not simultaneously. So if you can get them simultaneous, like we're talking about a big run here potentially for Clemson. Yeah, what was the stat going into this game? Wasn't the kicker perfect on kicks that got past the line of scrimmage? Essentially, like he hadn't had a miss that wasn't blocked.
Correct. And he had a miss in this game. I think he missed a 44-yard kick or a 42-yard kick. And he's an excellent kicker. I think the biggest issue is he kicks the ball low. A lot of those blocks, everyone wants to blame the line getting just pushed back, which some of them are that, but a lot of them are him kicking the ball low. So he's phenomenal when he gets the ball past the line of scrimmage. I guess that's just a little bit harder than we thought.
Absolutely. Well, I want to give a little bit of a live odds update here. According to FanDuel right now, this has dropped a couple times this morning. SMU still the overwhelming favorite to make the college football playoff over Alabama. The only 2 teams you can place a wager on FanDuel right now are SMU and Alabama. So that should tell you exactly how the bubble looks. Everyone else is thanks for participating situation right now. SMU is currently minus 720, guys. I think I saw it as high as minus 1,400 last night. So it's almost split in half. Alabama plus 440 right now in the live odds to make the college football playoff.
Well, am I crazy to think that there's absolutely no way Alabama gets in? Am I crazy? Because I think the way the game played out yesterday, the way that SMU is already ranked, because they have the same resumes coming into this weekend. Don't forget that. The committee thought high enough of SMU to rank them 8th compared to Alabama's schedule or resume and have them at 12. So I think ESPN and big media has just done a really good job of making this argument that I don't think actually exists in that committee's conference room. I mean, maybe I'm crazy, but I don't think there actually is any sort of drama. I think SMU gets in no matter what.
Look, I totally agree with you. I don't think there's really a case for Alabama, but we said the same thing last year. I sat here on the live stream with your co-host and Dan Keegan, and we were sitting here talking about, how are they going to find a way to keep out an undefeated conference champ? How are they going to do that? They won their whole conference, and Alabama lost again. How are we going to? And then we watched it happen in real time. We're like, Alabama, of course, and it'll be the same thing this year. It's just the fact that it's Alabama. Now, maybe no Saban. Maybe that helps SMU's case, right? Maybe that's the thing where they're not really going to care because, first year, no Saban, we'll leave them out. But look, at the end of the day, the one thing that I've never been more dumbfounded by is the way that the committee makes their decisions. They make some extremely interesting decisions, not just in who they let in, but also seeding. It seems like they'll just fall in love with the team and they'll just go and defend that team. They can't do that. They got to be objective. And if they love Bama, they're going to find a way to get Bama in.
What Ward Manuel has said this week over and over and over again, he's had multiple opportunities to clarify his statements, and he's doubled, tripled, quadrupled down, is that teams that didn't make the college football playoff are pretty much locked into their spot, or didn't make the conference championship, are pretty much locked into their spot. So I could have seen, we talked about this on our live stream on Tuesday, if that logic was solid and they followed that logic, the more interesting case would have been a Boise State that lost to UNLV over Alabama because they were ranked ahead of Alabama, right? So if you're really not reevaluating teams based on conference championship games, then Boise should still be above Alabama. SMU being all the way up at 8, it's hard for me to square the circle of the logic that would make them fall all the way to number 12. But that is what the AP poll had this morning. The AP poll had Alabama 11th and SMU 12th. And if the committee follows that, then that would leave SMU out. So very interesting to see. I did look it up last year. Florida State was number 4 in the AP poll following conference championship week, and Alabama was number 5. So Not always mirroring the AP poll, obviously, but just something else to monitor.
I want to throw up something that came in chat real quick. I thought this was an awesome point, and I want to highlight it. Alex, you're 100% right. Strength of schedule should matter after you win your games, not for a 9-3 Bama. I couldn't agree with that possibly any more than I do. You win your games first. Like, you can't just sit there and say, oh, well, we lost to a couple teams, but I guess we beat Georgia, so that's good enough. You don't get credit for a win over Georgia when you have losses to the entire state of Tennessee and Oklahoma. Like, you don't get to say, like, if you've lost to an entire state, if you came in last in the state championships of that state, you don't get to say, that's Vandy owns your state, by the way. They own the entire state of Alabama. So you don't get to claim any superiority if you're the Alabama Crimson Tide right now. So I can't justify it. I agree with Alex 100%. I think that if you lose your games, you don't get to talk about strength of schedule. If you're talking about 11-1 and you got to go compare two 11-1s, or there's going to be the Indiana conversation about their strength of schedule and who they beat. And I understand that. I'm not going to disagree with any of that. There's a lot of conversation to be had. But if you're 9-3 Alabama and you don't have a trophy sitting there, and you don't get to say, hey, we went and won the SEC, you don't get to talk at all today.
Hey, fun fact, Diego Pavia is undefeated in the state of Alabama. He's beaten Auburn twice, Alabama once, and Jacksonville State. So at New Mexico State and at Vanderbilt, he is undefeated in the state of Alabama.
Have we heard about his waiver situation? Is he going to get another year? I would love.
I think he got declined. I think that was I think
travesty.
Him and Alan Bowman are heading to the courtroom right now to go get that figured out.
And if he fails, he's coming to an XFL team near you and buy season tickets to watch it.
The Birmingham Stallions, baby.
Let's reset real quick, guys, as the selection show is getting underway on ESPN. We had some questions in the chat. Unfortunately, we cannot show that live feed if we want to keep this stream active. So we will be updating verbally, and we will have a graphic up as soon as that bracket is finalized. But let's reset with what we know that we know. Oregon's going to be the number 1 seed. They beat Penn State 45-37 last night to clinch the Big Ten championship. They'll get that bye, and they will be the number 1 seed.
Can I pause real quick? The shot of the one guy sitting in the front row for Arizona State was so funny. They got one guy slumped in his chair, just, yeah, we know we're in. Are we 3 or 4? Just kind of.
It's pretty early.
I thought that was great.
There.
What a performance from them, by the way. Arizona State is as hot as a team can be right now. I absolutely love that for them. It's going to be fun.
They're hotter than your middle school crush, man. They can't lose right now.
Whew, if that ain't the truth, man.
It's Cam Scadaboo's world, and we are just living in it, guys. Let's go there. Arizona State 45, Iowa State 19. A close back and forth game early. Arizona State started to pull away in the second quarter, and then was all Sun Devils in the third quarter, outscoring the Cyclones 21-0. Cam Scadaboo was the man. He was the offensive point. 16 carries for 170 yards and 2 touchdowns. Didn't even play in the fourth quarter. So a guy that if you see the Sun Devils in the second round, we thought that they were probably going to be on the road in the first round. They now are going to get the bye, most likely, unless Clemson jumps them. They'll probably be in that 4 spot, and it's going to be a really interesting matchup for a 5 seed that would presumably win in a 5-12 matchup. And unless it's Clemson, Clemson could definitely knock off somebody in a 5 seed on the road, but
I thought you were talking about something else. Yeah,
it's a tough matchup. It's going to be a tough matchup, whoever draws Arizona State in that second round.
Yeah, absolutely. It had Arizona State's and Clemson's outcome been reversed. I think Clemson jumps them and gets that 4 spot. But because we win by 3 against a higher ranked team, and they just blew the doors off of Iowa State, a lower ranked team, but still top 20. I think they're locked in at 4.
Yeah,
and like, people want to talk bad about Boise State getting in at 3. It's funny because the committee, obviously, when they put this together, anticipated the Power 4 being the top 4, then the Group of 5 being 5, and then
I love that got blown up in year 1.
It's beautiful. But Boise State, regardless of what you think about them, I don't know if people remember, it took a punt return and a kick return getting housed for Oregon to beat them. The number 1 team in the country, Oregon,
at home. It was in Eugene too.
2 special teams touchdowns to beat Boise State. That's a legitimate football team. So let's not get it twisted. Like, this team can compete with almost anybody in the country. And by almost anybody in the country.
Sorry to cut you off there, Moose. We're expecting the Broncos to be the 3 seed after they beat UNLV 21-7. Kind of went in cruise control in the second half there. Their defense was absolutely dominant at home on the blue turf. And you're absolutely right. They're going to be a problem for whoever they draw in the second round because they have the best player in the field. He might not win the Heisman over Travis Hunter if you believe the betting odds, but he's going to be the best individual player in the field for my money. So that's always going to be worth something. I know that their betting line will probably not reflect that in the individual matchup that they get in the second round, but they will have the best player in the field and anything could happen. Let's go to the SEC championship game. It was 22-19 Georgia over Texas. Both of these teams will, of course, be in, but Georgia will, in all likelihood, be the number 2 seed. I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be. And Texas will be hosting in the first round. It's just a question of where they fall seed-wise. Do they stay ahead of Notre Dame? Do they stay ahead of Penn State? I'm personally expecting them to be in the 5 range, 6 seed at worst, guys, and they'll be hosting a first-round playoff game.
I don't know. I think in this case, Notre Dame's going to get punished for not playing in a conference championship game. I think Georgia has a legitimate shot to jump them.
Well, Georgia will be the 2 seed. Notre Dame.
I forgot.
Yeah, Notre Dame can't be in the top 4.
They can't be doing that to me. I went to a farming school. We don't do math over at Clemson.
Agricultural and Mechanical College of Texas.
That's right.
A farming school with a trophy that got him in. I don't know what you're talking about, man.
Yeah. We can't use math to get in. We got to use objects.
No, you're not here for strength of schedule, metrics, and nothing like that. Go take your trophy. Be like, so who do I play first?
That's right. That's right.
I muted myself. That's the first time everybody take a shot. Try not to get drunk for me doing that today. We're still waiting for
11 a.m.
ESPN.
Central Standard Time.
Don't judge, man. No, there's no judgment on this show.
You can't drink all day if you don't start in the morning, right?
Arizona State is probably having a playoff party right now. It is 10 a.m. Mountain. I don't know what times. Arizona does stupid stuff with times. I don't know what time it is there, but it's earlier than here, and they're probably having a great party as they expect their first whatever.
Do they party in Tempe? I don't know. Do they party over there?
Arizona State, they might. They've been known to dabble. I think
they dabble. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's literally Kenny Dillingham's whole recruiting pitch at this point. If you listen to him talk.
Speaking of them, how crazy is it that they were picked to be the last team, like not even win a game this season?
People finally started talking about that yesterday when they won the college football playoff or the Big 12 championship game. I'm getting ahead of myself. Arizona State, put your money in now.
We're leaking the script here. I hate to tell you guys, it's going to be a magical run for the Sun Devils.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's an amazing story that I feel like not a lot of people were talking about until yesterday when they actually got it done. But picked dead last in the Big 12 and winning it and going to the college football playoff. Amazing job for Kenny Dillingham. And what I love even more is I highly doubt he's going anywhere anytime soon. He is an Arizona State dude, and he wants to build that program. At least it seems like from the outside, he wants to build that program into a Big 12 power.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal coach, and obviously he seems like to be a phenomenal human. I don't know if this was true, but I saw a story that came out that he took his bonus for making the Big 12 championship game and gave it to a lot of the staff that didn't get it. So I thought that was pretty awesome. They've done it in so many different ways too. I mean, obviously we didn't have Jordan Tyson yesterday in the game against Iowa State. I thought it was going to affect them a lot more. Obviously it did not. Cam Scatterbo is legitimate, and I think everyone knows that now. People who didn't watch Arizona State all year and just watched box scores probably didn't realize how good of a running back he actually is. I mean, I think he just broke another tackle. I think he probably broke a tackle coming into the college football playoff party over in Tempe. So Sam Leavitt, however you pronounce his name, is a redshirt freshman.
Yeah.
And does not play like it. He is ice cold, man. Like just watching him play, I'm so impressed by that football player. Just hats off to that dude. Hats off to Kenny Dillingham. They've done an excellent job finding a way. And I can guarantee you nobody wants to play them in the first round. People are going to say out on TV, Arizona State. Nobody wants to play them in the first round.
No. Well, and that's kind of to a point that we made on the show this last week that I thought was kind of interesting. When you consider Levitt and like the rest of these freshman quarterbacks that are out here, either redshirt or true freshmen, there's so many talented freshman quarterbacks that I think this sport is in for a heck of a next couple of years. The quarterbacks this year have been a little bit underwhelming. You know, there isn't really a quarterback in the Heisman, race. There's, a lot of sort of older guys that are on their, third or fourth stop, and it's their 7th year of college football. Those are kind of the main guys right now. But when you look at the guys who are younger and you look at some of these, you talked about Levitt, but you could talk about DJ Lagway at Florida. Obviously, we like Marcel Reed at A&M. There's a lot of these younger quarterbacks that if you're to look across the country, there's no way you could possibly name them all right now. But if you look across the country, this sport's in good hands over the next couple of years.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of fun. It's going to be a quarterback renaissance over the next couple of years. Little live odds update for you guys. On FanDuel, I don't have enough tabs open to keep track of all the books, but you can no longer bet on who will make the playoff between SMU and Alabama. I guess they closed that once the selection show started on ESPN. Speaking of leaking the script, for some reason, there's a line for Tennessee at Ohio State. Ohio State's 7.5-point favorites on that line on FanDuel. I don't know what that means, if that's a legit leak or not, but take that for what it's worth, I guess.
Yeah, we've been having a conversation about that in the chat about how Tennessee probably deserves the home spot over Ohio State. I would agree with just when you talk about quality wins, Tennessee versus Ohio State. This is where you get to start talking about strength of schedule, right? This is where you start to have that conversation. Who'd you beat? Who'd you lose to? And all that. But yeah, I think honestly, yeah, no, for sure. No, you're definitely right. No, yeah, I just think probably Tennessee should host the game. I think Rocky Top deserves that game. I think, Ohio State, they got their chance to show that they can win at home. They didn't do it. They didn't beat Michigan. That was pretty disappointing. But I'm not really going to be too upset either way. I do think right now I would lean Tennessee in that direction because I think you have to, say that they deserve it after beating a couple of pretty good teams this year. But yeah, we've been having that conversation in the chat for sure, and it's been a fun. Also, I just want to shout out, everybody watching, everybody, in the chat right now. You guys are absolutely popping off. I'm trying to respond to everybody. If I don't get to you, I apologize. It's we're trying to keep up with some of this. It's a true, low budget crew. We're not getting paid for any of this. It's just passion for us and just us loving the sport. So we appreciate y'all for hanging out with us. And yeah, we're sitting here watching the screen, a lot of resume comparison, lots of cuts to everybody's cafeterias and film rooms and everybody else. So we'll see what happens and when they actually get this thing started. But for now, we appreciate y'all hanging out with us.
Here's what I want to know, guys. And yes, 100%. Thank you guys so much for showing up on a Sunday morning. I know this is a really exciting time and a really exciting place to be just as college football fans. And we appreciate you spending your selection Sunday morning with us. Why do we keep showing wins and losses over 500? Why is that all of a sudden a metric that ESPN has created on these resume comparisons? I have not seen that one time this season until this
it helps
morning.
Alabama, so.
Well, barely. And the one extra loss is the game that Alabama didn't qualify to play. So if that's what if that's how we're trying to square the circle, what am I missing? Have you guys seen that before this morning? I have not.
I've never seen that as a metric ever.
Beating teams that are above 500, it's like, yeah, congrats. You didn't just beat up a bunch of nobodies. Also, like, doesn't it not make sense? I mean, I know what
Clemson needs that. We need that.
Okay, hold on. Okay. Clemson got their trophy. They're in. Don't worry about it. It's all seeding at this point. No, I think, man, I kind of struggle with this one because isn't it true? And I know that this is not necessarily true anymore because conferences have gotten too big, but I feel like those 500 wins are going to be kind of pointless because the teams at the top are going to beat a bunch of teams that are like 500 because like if you play everyone in your conference, they're all going to have to like beat each other or not. So most of the teams are going to kind of wash out around 500 anyways.
Right.
You can't tell me there's like a massive difference between 7-5 and 5-7 realistically. So I'm not going to make that case that the 500 stat makes a whole lot of sense. That doesn't make sense to me at least.
Hey, well, quick question to y'all real quick. Is there any, so, I think the biggest knock against the 12-team playoff was that the top of the top was still going to be the top, right? The cream of the crop was still going to be there. Like, all right, you're going to have 2-3 teams that can probably win it all. And then the rest is like, it's just, what are you doing? We're just giving people admission that don't belong. Has anybody in this top 12 that are going to be in separated themselves to the extent where you would say that. I think any team in this playoff can beat any team in this playoff. I mean, even Oregon, who's number 1 and undefeated, won by 1 against Ohio State, went to the wire with Wisconsin, almost lost to Boise State. Every team has flaws, very, very big flaws. I mean, Ohio State, there is no interior offensive line anymore. They struggle to move the ball. Their defense is phenomenal. You look at Texas. Texas is very similar to Ohio State in that way, where they win in the trenches. They win by playing really good defense, but they struggle to move the ball. Georgia, just like Clemson, hasn't played a full freaking game all year long. So, I mean, I think every team is flawed to the point where any team can beat anybody. And I really, truly think that.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think, that's a product of the transfer portal distributing talent a little bit more. I mentioned this on our Thursday show. You look at recruiting this year, Texas signs the number 1 class, but it's the lowest ranked number 1 class from a 247 points perspective in the composite since 2016. And it's the most teams within 30 points of that top score since 2016. We had 9 programs that were within 30 points of the top overall class. So parity is back in college football, and I am here for it. We can talk about the just pitfalls of NIL, pitfalls of the transfer portal all we want, but it's inarguable at this point that it has created way more parity than we've seen. And I think you're especially seeing that in the SEC. We have 16 programs that can throw their money around and throw their weight around in the SEC. And I don't want to turn this into a, SEC, writing show, but it is undoubtable that there are more programs capable of throwing that type of money around in the SEC. And that's going to result in more losses for those teams, especially if we get unbalanced schedules. Kirby Smart yesterday on the stage at the SEC championship threw shade at Greg Sankey, who was standing like 3 feet from him, for his schedule that sent the Bulldogs on the road for multiple quality opponents this year. And look, if you want to say that you're the premier program in college football, that really shouldn't matter. And they handled that schedule relatively well, going 10-2. But it's there's going to be situations where these teams get got, especially on the road. It's going to be more and more like college basketball. I keep using that analogy, but it's going to be more and more like college basketball, where it's really hard to win on the road, but you look at the whole season body of work and you get a clearer picture of who really should be in the top 12. But I'm pumped for this 12-team playoff, man. I think you're absolutely right. I think that there's going to be some upsets in the first round. There's going to be some teams that go on the road and knock off opponents that we thought were in that elite category, and they're going to be sitting at home by the time we get to neutral games in the second round. Mic drop. That's all we need to say, right? Let's just end the show right
really
there.
have much to add to that. I think Trey cleaned it up, man.
That's awesome.
Well, we are just a reset for you guys. If you're not watching on ESPN, we're in a commercial break right now. We spent the first 20 minutes of the show going around the country and taking live looks. Again, I'm not trying to like tease anything or force a storyline where it isn't, but SMU not having a watch party today is a little interesting to me. I don't know if y'all saw that graphic pop up. They did get back very late last night from Charlotte. They flew back from Charlotte last night. So letting the guys sleep in, I totally get it, not having a mandatory team meeting. But Narrative Street, baby.
You heard it.
Not having a watch party this morning.
Texas, not a football state. That's right. You just heard it here first.
Egg on our face, I guess. We gotta own that as a state. We gotta say, hey, look, here in Texas, I know that Friday night, it's the only thing that anybody does is go to the high school football games. I understand that. There's, plenty of teams in the state that have a lot of, passion and care and all that. But, not a football state. SMU, no watch party. And, I bet you look at that watch party at the University of Texas, it's probably not very good either. It's not a football state, right?
No, that's right. Who would y'all put at 5?
If I was just going off of who I think is the best team out of that big group, and this might be a little bit of a hot take, I probably think the best team out of that group is Penn State. They hung with Oregon last night. I thought that they looked pretty good.
They fought back.
And honestly, like looking at that game last night, and I might be off on this one. I was a little bit more locked in on the ACC last night, and that was at a birthday party, so I was kind of having to flip between the two. But it seemed like every time I flipped back over to Oregon, Penn State, both of those teams were just making plays. It just seems like both of those teams are better. There are a couple missed opportunities for Penn State. The officiating is definitely a question in that one. I get that from the Penn State side. I understand that. I'm not going to quite go the 100% with you, but I understand the grievances. If it was my team, I'd be right with you. But I just think Penn State probably looked the best out of that group, which is interesting because Penn State's kind of been flying under the radar this year. But when you look at what they have, if you look at the team that they actually put on the field, the way that they work together, they I think looked better than if we're going to compare it to a Texas, right? Or if we're going to compare it to, almost anybody else in that group. I would say probably right now, Penn State is one of those teams that I probably don't want to play if I'm a lot of those, if I'm in the, 9 to 12 range. I don't want to get Penn State in the first round.
Right. I mean, look at Texas. I think they're similar to Texas. They play very similar football to Texas in the sense that they rely heavily on their defense and then ball control. But the thing they did differently that they've done all year long was last night when they went down double digits, they didn't just roll over. Like, they fought back and they were able to make big-time plays down the field. They were throwing passing touchdowns. I don't think we've seen that from the Nittany Lions in a long time. So, I mean, that was really encouraging to see. And I think, Garrett, like, are they announcing it now?
Let me break in right here. It looks like we've got the blank bracket on the screen, and we do have our first team in. Oregon.
Oregon's there.
Oregon will be the 1 seed.
That's a shock. Oh my gosh, that's a shock.
Georgia,
well, the committee's using logic, guys. That's 1 for 1 on using logic. We'll see how long that streak lasts. But Oregon, champions of the Big Ten in their first year, 13-0, gets the number 1 seed. Georgia, champions of the SEC, 11-2. Much talked about how people would be. The Georgia had a down year, but they're 11-2. They'll be in the number 2 seed and awaiting a winner of a first-round game.
Guys, this might be lame, but I have butterflies right now. We're watching history. We are. Like the historical. I love history. I was a history major.
Oh, there we go.
That historical side of me is just like, this is beautiful. Like, I can sit back and tell my kids one day that, I was on the 3 Tech Pod live stream talking about the 12-team playoff, the very first one in my Clemson Tigers. Our Clemson Tigers were in there. I mean, this is cool. I mean, again, thank y'all for having me on here and allowing me to share this moment with y'all, because this is such a surreal moment to me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Now, dude, you rock. You got a spot on the show whenever you want it, man. You can just, hit us up on Twitter. Be like, hey, I'm coming on for 10 minutes tonight. We're gonna be like, all right, we'll make space.
I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that to your following. They might not enjoy it. Oh, Boise State at 3.
Yes, let's go.
Boise State in at 3. So that debate will end with the Broncos getting a coveted bye.
Hey, we love G5. Oh, and what a reaction too.
Hold on, I got to put on the sound. There's a slight chance that Clemson jumps them. And I have to have the sound on if that happens. So I'm muting myself.
You're all good. You're all good.
I will unmute myself if I react.
So, yeah, great reaction in Boise, Idaho for that 3 seed. Well-deserved. So just tracking rankings here, they are putting the rankings up on the side. Boise State checks in at number 9. That's up 1 from last week. They were 10th going into conference champions. Obviously, that means SMU will be behind Boise State. So that's, read into that what you will if you're rooting for the Mustangs to make it to the college football playoff. Arizona State gets the 4 seed as
I think that's
12.
probably right. I think it's probably right, but I understand the disappointment over there on the Clemson side, obviously. But Arizona State looked fantastic this last one. And when you're hot and you go on a run like this, it's really hard to say no. And so it's, Clemson a little bit up and down, down the stretch, obviously not taking care of business against South near. I can't really complain about it. I think either way, I'd be okay with that 4 seed.
So Arizona State ranked number 12 in the college football playoff rankings. If we're doing some math here, it doesn't matter where Clemson is ranked because they will be the 12 seed here as the 5th conference champion. So they're going to slot into that last spot there.
Well, is there any chance that Clemson jumps to 11 and SMU falls to 12?
Well,
if it's SMU at 12, that's definitely a possibility.
That is possible. I guess you guys are right. Yeah.
But we would have to jump South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Bama and I don't know if that happens.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's tough.
That is
12.
possible.
Okay,
yeah.
yes, they lock him into 12. Yeah.
They'll lock him in. We'll see. I
Man,
think you guys are a little bit
To
ahead
me,
of me.
it's kind of funny getting to watch these because you see 1, 2, 3, 4 come out, and then it's like, all right, we're gonna go to 12 because you already knew that they were gonna make it, so we're just gonna put them there. We more get like the number reveal, like is it gonna be 11? Is it gonna be 12? I guess we'll see because we already knew Clemson's gonna make it, so it's kind of a funny new feature of that I didn't think that I was gonna. I wasn't really anticipating that going into it because all the rankings, right? You'd seen them kind of go up to the top. This time, we get the top, and then we're like, all right, so we know who got the trophies. We're going to give you their numbers. Now let's talk about the part that everyone's going to care about. So,
yeah,
I'm assuming
do they
they'll
announce
start,
11 first, or
I would assume they would start at 5 just for the drama.
I think, for the drama, I think we're going to start at 5.
We're playing Texas.
Moose, come on, baby.
Hey,
Heading to
I have a
Austin,
guest
baby.
room literally an hour and a half. That's
Orange
right.
down.
Yes.
Orange
Get it
down.
going.
Matthew
Texas is
McConaughey,
the
where's
highest-
deodorant, you
they're ranked-
stinky man.
They're ranked 3rd in the college football playoff top 25, but not a conference champion, so they will fall to the number 5 spot. It'll be interesting. I'm guessing if Texas is 3, I'm guessing that's going to mean Penn State is 4 and Notre Dame is 5. So Penn State will likely be the 6 seed, Notre Dame the 7 seed. There's the live shot of Austin, the watch party in Austin.
And you were right, Moose. It was a lame watch party. So yeah,
it does look pretty lame.
Not a football state. I've been trying to tell y'all.
Austin, we don't claim most real Texans don't claim Austin, to be fair.
That is true.
I would say quite a few don't claim Dallas either.
That's a whole bunch. Really, we got the 2 worst of the cities in the state of Texas, if we're being honest.
I mean, Houston has a claim to that as well, I would say. But
Houston's in there as well, yeah.
Let's make every city in Texas where we grow our following from just very upset right now. That would be great.
Hey, I'll trash every city in the state. What are you talking about, man?
That's
There's
right.
problems with all the cities in this beautiful state of ours.
Penn State in at number 6. They will also be hosting a first-round matchup. Not a surprise there. And, yeah, I think that's going to mean Notre Dame will be the 7 seed feeding into the Georgia portion of the bracket. Penn State, not punished for losing to number 1. Obviously, they were maybe in contention for a 5 seed to play Arizona State in the second round, but they might be a little happier on paper playing Boise State in the second round.
Do you think the committee announces their opponent, or do they keep going in order?
I think we're going in order.
Oh, yeah, there's order. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, I think we're going in order. Because
also, I guess, Moose, from a Clemson fan, would you rather have played Texas or Penn State?
Notre Dame,
would you rather have which matchup would you have preferred?
I don't know. That's a great question. I think Texas is a little bit more flawed. And honestly, like a little bit of the revenge factor. Andrew Makuba, one of our safeties, transfers to Texas.
You mean the guy that should have gotten ejected for targeting and didn't get ejected for targeting?
Yeah,
I'm not going to hold that one.
That was a car. We watched a 45-mile-per-hour car accident when that hit happened. That was insane.
But it wasn't like the direct spot of the helmet. It was kind of to the side. So, like, what are you going to say?
And then he knocked Gunnar Stockton's
targeting spot on the helmet.
And then he knocked Gunnar Stockton's helmet into the next zip code yesterday.
Yes, he did.
Flag got picked up.
But I think Texas and Penn State are very similar, like we talked about earlier. Quinn Ewers, Drew Aller, they're both been injured. Texas has Arch that can come in. I don't think Penn State's. I forget the backup's name, but he came in against Wisconsin and played pretty well. But he's not as good as Arch. I don't know. I like this matchup. Battle of the Orange. Who's got the true orange? Is it burnt orange or is it
it's not burnt orange. I'll defend y'all on that one to the end of time. It's not burnt orange.
God didn't put burnt orange on a sunset. He put Clemson orange up there, and he put a little bit of purple in there too. Okay, so God's a Clemson fan.
I can't disagree with it.
Can't argue with that. Can't argue with that at all. Ohio State checks in at number 8, so they will be hosting, but right there on that bubble, man. That Michigan win, Michigan loss, excuse me. I said last week that I thought they should be punished a little bit more for that. Personally, I think that they should, as 20-point favorites, losing that game. If we're going to draw that battle line, right? We talked about it with Alabama. We talked about it with a lot of other teams. I thought Ohio State should lose the right to host for losing that game personally, but they do not lose, they will host Tennessee, the number 9 seed. So FanDuel, I guess, had the script. We already have a line.
Hey, and I think it's confirmed we're not going to have any rematches, right? At this point, there's no way we can have a rematch.
Because Indiana didn't play Penn State, and Alabama or SMU, neither one played them either.
Yeah, so I like that because I
have a guy in the chat real quick. A guy in the chat from a little while back was talking about, as a season ticket holder and huge Buckeye fan, he didn't think that they had earned the home playoff game. So I know that we had a little bit of a conversation about that. Where should it be? Should it be in Knoxville? Should it be in Columbus? We get Columbus. I don't know if that's just they weren't going to let Ohio State fall that far, but Tennessee fans, I feel you. I'm with you. I think that game probably should have been played at Rocky Top, but go take care of business, and they won't care about it in a couple weeks. So there you go.
Absolutely. Dylan Sampson is going to I don't know. That's going to be a good game.
He could run for all the yards in that game. He's got
He's built for cold weather.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that running game, and I mean a physical team in Tennessee too, that we all know the narrative about Ohio State when it comes to physical teams. A lot of that's been built on the backs of Michigan, but Tennessee, a very physical, athletic.
Look, if Michigan can beat Ohio
the Battle
State
of South
with
Bend,
no quarterback,
the Battle of Indiana.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I love that pick. Also, Indiana, at 10 going to Notre Dame. But real quick, if Michigan can beat Ohio State with no quarterback, Nico's going to have no issues. It's going to be all right.
Yeah.
Tennessee fans, breathe. It's going to be okay.
Another addition to the Clemson, Texas story. Cade Klubnik.
Yep,
right around the Austin area.
Yeah, literally.
And a rematch of the state championship game from a couple years
ago
when it was Cade Klubnik against Quinn Ewers. Quinn did not look good in that game. There's an issue with Quinn's game that I've talked about for a while, where when he gets blitzed or if he's under pressure, he just kind of melts down and has a really hard time figuring it out. It's going to be interesting to see if Clemson can get after him with the pass rush and get that one figured out.
So TJ Parker, who I think should have been the MVP last night, I cannot wait to see what he does in the playoffs. He is a phenomenal football player. After the first half, he had 4.5 tackles for loss, a strip sack. Just a phenomenal football player. You have to think the committee right here announces first one out and second one out before they go to the last team, right? Like we're about to see Ole Miss pop up on second team out. And then we're really going to see.
But they're not going to say it. They're just going to pop up the graphic. We're like, Ole Miss is in.
Just kidding. Yeah.
How did they? Oh yeah.
My heart's beating pretty fast. I mean, honestly, I know I'm biased. If you watched that SMU game last night, they are a freaking good football team.
That's a good team.
I don't want to see ratings beat football. You never want to see that happen. Mm-hmm. And I think if Alabama gets put in, it's a ratings over football. That's what happened last year, even though it is a little different. I mean, Jordan Travis, they looked like they had a middle school offense after he went out. I mean, they were terrible. And look at him this year. I mean, I can understand that. And I think the committee makes it right by having.
Yeah, they did it. They did the right thing. Let's go.
They did the right.
I love it. They did the right thing. Great job. Let's go Mustangs. America's sweetheart. I mean, I think everyone loves SMU this year. This is such a beautiful graphic, guys. This is so beautiful.
This is what we deserved.
Give me numbers, give me logos, give me colors, and I can stare at this all day.
So 3 SEC teams make the field: Georgia, Texas, Tennessee. 4 from the Big Ten: Oregon, Indiana, Penn State, and Ohio State. 2 from the ACC, Clemson and SMU. 1 from the Big 12, and 1 from the Mountain West in Arizona State and Boise State. And then, of course, Notre Dame Independent. There's the graphic on the screen if you're following along. Thank you to On3 for having that ready to go. There it is, folks. Like Moose said earlier, this is historic. A historic moment in college football with the first ever 12-team playoff. Guys, Nick Saban looks pissed beyond belief on the screen right now, and I kind of love it.
He does look pretty upset.
Yeah, I'm having it on mute, but I'm sure he's ranting about strength of schedule and the SEC and how SMU's never had to play in an SEC road game. Whatever. SMU's in. Right decision made. Y'all's first thoughts as we look at this bracket.
Hey, and I'm going to have to jump. I appreciate y'all allowing me to come on this today.
Absolutely.
This was so much fun. y'all are doing a great job over there. I really admire the work that y'all do. So keep it up. Love watching what y'all do. Love being a part of this. And go Tigers.
Let the folks
Thank you,
know where
baby.
to find you, Moose, real quick before you jump off.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter or X, at Walk On Moose. You can find us on YouTube at the Walk On Red Shirts. Not the Walk On Red Shirts, but Walk On Red Shirts. You can follow Jake, who's the owner of our account, Walk On Red Shirts on X. You can also have me at William Cockrell 82 on Instagram. I put a little bit of stuff on there every now and then. I add a reel. Just come consume our content. It's pretty good. I think we do a decent job. We try to be unbiased. Every now and then my bias might seep through just a little bit. I don't know.
Who's your team again?
I can't remember. Oh, Gamecocks. Sumter High, my high school, the Sumter High Gamecocks. No.
Love it.
But thanks again, guys, and y'all have a great weekend.
Yeah, and if you end up in Austin, let us know. We'll find a way to link up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm about to go get on my hands and knees and beg my wife.
Well, best of luck to that. He's being super humble, guys. Go check out their content.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Moose. We'll talk to you later.
See you.
All right, there he goes. And we will keep the stream going with Garrett and I as we have a full bracket. Garrett, if you could throw that back up on the screen there for the people. I'm just so excited, man. Like, I don't know what else to say. I'm very excited that the committee put SMU in. I think that is a great decision. And I'm just blown away that they followed their own logic that they said they were going to do.
Yeah.
And I know that strength of schedule and SEC thumpers will be very upset with this, but it came down to don't lose to 6-6 teams. And I love that those games still mattered, even in a 12-team playoff.
Yeah, and I think the good news about this is we had kind of talked about, are they going to reward wins or losses in this? And I had kind of brought that point up. Like, we don't really know in this first iteration of the 12-team playoff if they're going to reward you for winning a bunch of games or for losing games that they are okay with, right? Like, did they lose a game that we're going to, allow them to slide because they won a different game? Fortunately, they did the right thing. They're going to reward the wins. They're going to say that, hey, SMU, you won your games. SMU, you took care of business. Your losses, while you shouldn't lose games if you want to make the playoff, your losses weren't all that bad, and we're going to reward your wins instead of rewarding the losses of Alabama, right? They rewarded, they could have decided to reward Alabama for losing a bunch of games and saying like, well, there's some bad ones, but you also kind of beat Georgia, so like, I guess your losses aren't all. Like, no, they decided to come in there and say, you know what, SMU, you won your games, you played your schedule, you took care of business. I think they did the right thing. And also, like, I don't know, do we know how many members are on the committee? I don't know how many are on the committee officially. I'm just trying to figure out. I'm just trying to figure out how many bouquets of flowers I need to run up to the Gaylord real quick, and just get up there real quick and say hi. Thank you for doing the right thing. I know that it's probably not easy, and other people talking to you about ratings and all that, but thank you for doing the right thing. It should be commended that the committee, I think, got it right. I might take issue with the fact that Tennessee's not hosting, and I do think that they probably should be. But outside of that, I'm not going to complain too much. I think that this was a very good job by the committee overall.
I'm absolutely with you. And like we've said all week, right? If you're on the bubble, you don't have a right to complain because you put yourself on the bubble. Win the games that are on your schedule, and we're not talking about this. If Alabama wins by just 1 point in Norman, Oklahoma, or Nashville against Vanderbilt, they're probably hosting a first-round playoff game, and we're probably seeing Ohio State on the road because of a more recent loss. But they didn't take care of business. And for all the people that are saying games no longer matter, games are going to be devalued, the regular season is going to be devalued, it wasn't the big games that sunk Alabama. It wasn't losing to Georgia. They beat Georgia. It wasn't losing to Tennessee that sunk Alabama. It was losing to run-of-the-mill normal games that weren't even on our radars. We didn't preview either. We mentioned the Bama-Vandy game as a... You got something to share with the class? I think your audio on that tweet came through a little bit, Garrett. But it's all good. But all right, we got a Family Guy meme that Garrett's going to show in here just a second. But
Peter. The horse is here.
Oh my god. Okay. Yeah, that's
I
the
had to
reaction.
throw that up. That was SMU.
That's from
official
SMU's
account.
media team. Wow. They've
That
been
was
stewing
official.
on
I
that.
had to throw it up. I'm sorry. That was too good.
No, you're good. They've been stewing on that for weeks. But what I was saying was the games mattered, right? And it wasn't the big games necessarily that mattered. It wasn't losing to Tennessee or Georgia that sunk Alabama. It was losing 2 games that we did not even barely preview, right? We mentioned Vandy Bama on that preview show that week as a it would be so funny if Vandy won. And then they won. And then I don't even think we talked about Oklahoma, Alabama, except just mentioning it as an afterthought.
Yeah, well, and we mentioned it basically to validate our take from the offseason that Oklahoma was going to struggle to make a bowl game, which ended up being right. They did struggle to make the bowl game. We talked about it as they're not going to make a bowl game because Alabama's going to handle their business. That didn't happen. So, shout out Oklahoma for that win. But yeah, we didn't even talk about that game in any real depth. We didn't break down the matchups because it was a foregone conclusion Alabama should win that game, and then they didn't take care of their business.
There are 13 members of the committee, Garrett, just for your flower
13
ordering.
bouquets of roses. We appreciate y'all.
Absolutely. Mitch is texting me right now. He wants it to be known that he almost nailed the final prediction. You can check the receipts on Twitter. The only thing he had wrong is he thought that the committee would value head-to-head, Clemson winning over SMU and put Clemson in the 11, SMU in the 12. That's the only thing that Mitch missed. He nailed it. So props to him on that. Yeah. So let's start looking at these matchups, Garrett, because we have 2 weeks to kind of nosh on these rankings. We'll have a full preview show, obviously, but brackets on the left side of the screen if you're watching. I'll run it down if you're just listening and you haven't seen it yet. Number 12, Clemson at number 5, Texas. Number 9, Tennessee at number 8, Ohio State. Number 11, SMU at number 6, Penn State. Number 10, Indiana at number 7, Notre Dame. First of all, as Moose mentioned before he left, no rematches. That's huge. And we have some all interconference games, which I'm really excited. All these debates about conference supremacy and who has the stronger conference, who's facing the tougher schedule. We're going to get some answers to that in the first round, Garrett.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. And I think the big thing that I noticed about this was that, obviously they didn't just go for like straight ratings, but they also got some really interesting games, right? They got, Clemson, Texas, like we talked about off the top. It's the, state championship rematch, Klubnik versus, Quinn, and, kind of getting that little number going. A couple of orange teams, right? It's kind of fun too. You get an orange on orange. You get Tennessee, Ohio State. That's closer to a regional than I think a lot of people think about. I think I've been talking about that, but the Tennessee, Ohio State game is a fairly close game in terms of where those two teams are. Really, there should be a big Tennessee contingent at that game. There should be a lot of orange in the crowd for that game, and I think Tennessee has a great chance to knock that one off. Indiana, Notre Dame, obviously, is an interstate as well, and so that's going to be a fun one to watch, kind of play out, those two teams getting to fight to go play Georgia. And then the only one that really isn't like a big, massive, cool storyline one is going to be that SMU Penn State. But that really doesn't have anything to do with either of those teams geographically or anything like that. But I think this is a great call. I love what's going on here. There's, SMU and Penn State, a couple teams with a lot to prove. They're going to go up against Boise State, another one with a lot to prove. So kind of feels like that little quarter of the bracket is going to be a massive, like, who's going to prove that they really belong there type of thing, right? SMU being the team that gets in over Bama, Penn State, there's a lot of conversations about them just making it because they, sort of had the easy schedule. They lose to Ohio State, who they really beat. And then obviously Boise State being the G5 team. That's going to be an interesting quarter of the bracket to watch, see who comes out of that one in the semifinals.
A lot less drama this year. I did not get to be on the playoff live show last year, but there's a lot more drama last year with Florida State being left out. It's kind of nice to have a drama-free Selection Sunday, Garrett. Like, I know if you're an Alabama fan, like Alex in the chat, his friend is apparently really butthurt, but if you're on the bubble, you don't have a right to be butthurt. Win your games. I kind of love that we just didn't really have a lot of drama. It was SMU versus Bama, but they made the right decision. And I don't have anything to roast the committee about. I really can't argue. I mean, I think I think that the Buckeyes probably should be going to Knoxville instead of hosting Tennessee. But other than that, I really don't have a big beef about the rankings either. I think Texas and Penn State being 5 and 6, Texas, Penn State, and Notre Dame, and even Indiana are really a product more of their schedules. And we're going to have teams like that, but they won the games they were supposed to, took care of business. And that's why they're being rewarded with the seeding that they're getting.
Mm-hmm. And I have a decent question as well, and I'm kind of thinking about this as I'm looking at the bracket. Which of these quarters do you think produces the national champion?
Ooh, great question.
Because some of these matchups are really, really interesting.
So the pods of 3 is what you're saying.
Yeah, like the pods of 3 of the
that would be Clemson, Texas, Arizona State. That's the top.
Mm-hmm.
Tennessee, Ohio State, Oregon, SMU, Penn State, Boise State, or Indiana, Notre Dame, Georgia. I feel like you gotta go that second one if you're a betting person. Like if you had to put actual money on a quad, I'd go with the second one just because it includes Oregon.
Right.
But I mean, there's definitely a case to be made for the Georgia, Indiana, Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame is a sleeper team. I hate that they're going to draw Georgia in the second round, but yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Where do you lean with that?
I think I might go with that top group, that Clemson, Texas, Arizona State, because Clemson and Arizona State are about as hot as it gets right now. And I think you have to reward the streaks, right? You have to say like, oh, look, Clemson coming in, kind of from nowhere, winning the ACC, right? We weren't really talking about them, and they kind of come screaming in at the buzzer to find their way in at 12. And then Arizona State, obviously a super hot team. Nobody thought they were going to be talk about screaming it into the playoffs. Arizona State came out of nowhere, then blitzkrieging everybody on their schedule the last couple weeks. And then obviously Texas, a very good football team. They could find their way through as well. I think there's a good chance that, the thing that I think is going to be a problem for that second group is I think they're going to absolutely beat each other up and drain each other. That Tennessee, Ohio State, Oregon, there's not going to be a lot of, I think, emotion left in the tank by the time we hit the semifinals. I think Oregon's probably your best bet to come out of that. And as I sit here, if I just had to pick one team, I'm picking Oregon. They looked like the best team, but I think Tennessee and Ohio State, either of those teams, is going to give Oregon an absolute run for their money and give them a really tough game. So I don't know. I think that this could be really fun. This is going to be a really fun month and a half to get to the championship, because I think this is going to be a heck of a month for college football. A lot of really great matchups, and ultimately we're going to get to watch some of the best college football games of the year happen over the next several weeks.
Yeah, what was the Dr. Pepper commercial that kind of dropped yesterday? The playoffness or whatever it was.
Oh yeah.
Football number. I can't even remember. But
that was fun.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk lines before we get out of here, Garrett. We can take the direction no matter where you want, but we have first round lines from FanDuel, and we also have national championship odds. So I'll start with the first round lines.
Okay.
Texas is going to be an 11.5 point favorite. Texas opens as an 11.5 point favorite, I should say, against Clemson. Ohio State is a 7.5 point favorite at home against Tennessee. Penn State, 7.5 point favorite at home against SMU. And Notre Dame, 7.5 point favorite at home against Indiana. So a lot of touchdown and a hook, but Texas a little bit more expanded with 11.5. I don't want to do the cheesy, if you had to put money on an underdog in that first round, which one would you go with? But just a general reaction to those lines. It feels a little safe, like a little tepid a little bit from Vegas, just trying to get some action either way, of course. But yeah, general thoughts on those first round lines.
Yeah, man, I don't know. I don't love a lot of those lines. That feels a little disrespectful. It seems like those lines are not really accounting for how good some of those teams in those, in that bottom, I guess, third are. I don't like that number for Texas at all. I don't think Texas has shown you they can beat a team by a whole lot recently. They lose by 3 to Georgia. They beat A&M by 10. They beat Arkansas by 10. I guess they beat Kentucky by a whole bunch, but they beat a lot of not as good as Clemson teams by not that number. So I don't know that I love that number for Texas. Texas could still win that game. I'm not doubting Texas' ability to win that game, but I think their path to beating Clemson looks a lot more like 4 points than it does 11.5 points. I also think that number is pretty disrespectful to Tennessee, as if you're looking at Ohio State, saying, oh, Ohio State's for sure going to just smoke Tennessee. I think that's a reach for sure. I think Tennessee's looked pretty good. It also could just be that we haven't seen a couple of these teams, right? Like we hadn't seen Tennessee in a few weeks. We hadn't seen Ohio State in a few weeks. So we're kind of just reverting back to what we think we know about these teams as opposed to actually looking at this matchup as if either of these teams had played yesterday. I really would be curious to see, if these lines look different because I think they got SMU Penn State about right. I'd probably pick Penn State by about a touchdown right now. Not to say the Ponies can't figure it out, but I would pick Penn State at home by about a touchdown. And then, the Notre Dame-Indiana line, I'm not going to complain about that one either. That seems super fair.
I think SMU is the most interesting one to me because you combine Penn State's struggles in these spots, right? They famously struggle in these massive games. They're going to be at home. It'll be interesting to see if they finally get a big night game at home. But Penn State famously struggles, and SMU has a lot of matchup problems. Obviously, they struggled at the start, and that kind of sunk them. But if they play like they played in the second half against Clemson last night, it's going to be a really tough game for Penn State.
Yeah, and the thing about it is I'm super impressed with what Penn State is in terms of what they've done over the course of the season, what they've been able to accomplish. But yeah, there's just moments where it seems like they'll disappear. And if you disappear against the Ponies, they'll make you pay for it. I mean, it's not that, SMU's come out there and look good in all of their games. They've certainly had a couple stinkers where they found a way to win, but didn't necessarily look good doing it. I'm thinking about the Duke game for sure. But yeah, like if you don't show up and if you don't, bring it against this SMU team, you'll be down a couple touchdowns looking up and needing to catch up pretty quick.
Let's look at the championship odds as we sit here right now. Obviously, I was actually going to say, obviously it mirrors the seeding, but it does not mirror the seeding. Oregon is obviously at the top, but they're listed as co-favorites with Georgia, both plus 350. So usually in a 14 playoff, we would have a clear runaway favorite. Usually whoever won the SEC was minus odds, right? Like you had to risk more money than you were going to win to pick them to win the college football playoff. Not so this year. The co-favorites are at plus 350, Oregon and Georgia. Texas right behind them at plus 360. Ohio State plus 450. Penn State plus 700. Notre Dame plus 1,100. I'd be circling that one as maybe a value pick if they can get by Georgia.
That'd be okay.
Tennessee plus 3,000. SMU plus 4,500. Indiana plus 4,500, Arizona State plus 5,000, Clemson plus 5,000, and Boise State plus 6,500. If I told you you had to pick someone other than Oregon, Georgia, Texas, maybe Ohio State. I'll throw Ohio State in there too. You have to pick someone outside of that top four, odds-wise. Who would you make a little investment in before we start the playoff?
I'm going to go with the Heat, man. Give me Arizona State. Like, I kind of have a feeling about Arizona State going on a run here. I could be totally wrong. They might get smoked in their first game. Clemson or Texas could definitely go in and, beat them by 30, I guess. But, man, this team is playing hot. Cam Scattaboo's about as good a running back as you can get. He just finds the yards. Levitt has been playing a lot better at quarterback. That defense is actually playing pretty good defense as well. A lot of bend but don't break yesterday in the first half, then shut it down in the second half. Man, that Sun Devils team is playing some good football, and I think we're not going to talk enough about them over the next however long. I think that they're a little bit of a sleeper pick here, but yeah, I get a kind of long odds at them. I'll take long odds at Arizona State for sure. I'll run with that one.
Well, you made me panic because I just sent out a tweet with those first round odds, and I forgot that Arizona State got a bye because we've been so penciling them into the 12th seed for the last little bit. You made me panic that I forgot to put them in the tweet, but no, they have a bye, so we need to remember that. Who do you think got the best draw from the teams that did not receive a bye? Like who, as a non-top 4 seed team, do you see, and if you want to bring the bracket back up to look at for the people, thank you, sir. Who do you think got the best draw here? Obviously, I think you're going to probably lean towards Texas or Notre Dame, but maybe there's a different answer.
The best draw
Texas
right now
or Penn State, I should say.
The best draw is Penn State. If you're Penn State, you should have the talent advantage just on paper over both of the teams you could play getting to the semifinals. SMU and Boise State, obviously, good teams belong there, can definitely win. But yeah, Penn State, I think they've got to be feeling pretty good. I think Penn State Twitter has got to be feeling fantastic about where they sit right now. Because if you're telling me Penn State would rather play SMU or Clemson, I know Clemson just won that game last night, but I think probably Penn State is saying, yeah, we're glad that we got the loser of that game by a pretty large margin. And then, yeah, you get Boise State, who I think is going to be a lot more competitive than we think they are, but I don't know that they have what it takes to win a game against Penn State. The talent differential there just across the board, I think, is going to be an issue. They'll run the ball for sure, but I think that could be an issue for Boise State long-term, is just a talent differential. And then you look at, if you're Penn State getting even further into the bracket, you look at not having to play Oregon, Ohio State, or Texas until a possible national championship. You got to deal with a Georgia Notre Dame team that hasn't really proven they've beaten anyone that good this year, and a Georgia team who has certainly looked flawed at times. I think of those teams, Penn State has to feel fantastic about their path to make it to a national championship game.
I like that pick. I think Texas has a really good road as well as the 5 seed. Obviously, there was much made about the 5 seed being a really good spot, but they're going to play Clemson in the first round. That's a tough matchup, though. I would lean Penn State because I do think Clemson has the athletes to hang with Texas, and it's going to be really interesting. But they're going to play Arizona State in the Cotton Bowl, Garrett, I believe, if I remember that correctly.
I do have the matchups. That game will be Peach Bowl.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that game is Peach Bowl. I actually do have all the matchups real quick. So
yeah, can you pull that up?
Yeah, I got that. Well, it's the screenshot from the. We're going to share this, instead. So this is a screenshot from the college football playoff ranking shows, just where I paused it here. So you have, obviously, first round, the Texas-Clemson game is on TNT, as well as the SMU Penn State game. They're going to put Ohio State, Tennessee, and then Notre Dame, Indiana, both on ABC and ESPN.
So wait. So Penn State got another noon kickoff?
Probably on TNT as well, which is hilarious that's what they keep doing to this team.
College football hates Penn State, man. I don't know why we hate. Why can't Penn State have one nice thing?
Yeah, can they get one? They made the playoffs. Can they get one nice thing? Just one?
Why are we rewarding Ohio State with a home game and a night game? What are we doing?
Idea, man. But yeah, so Peach Bowl is going to be Arizona State versus the winner of Clemson, Texas. That's going to be at noon. It's 1 Eastern is what they say. Rose Bowl is going to be Oregon versus whoever Ohio State or Tennessee is. Tennessee with an opportunity to go play in the Rose Bowl is fantastic to me. I don't know what. It feels funny that Tennessee could go play in the Rose Bowl. It just seems wrong. Obviously, I know that's been on rotation, but it just seems weird that SEC teams play in the Rose Bowl. It could be 2 in a row as well with Alabama last year playing Michigan. It could be Tennessee playing Oregon. That'd be funny. And then you get the Fiesta Bowl. That's going to be Boise State versus whoever wins SMU Penn State. I always love the Fiesta Bowl. It always feels like the most weird random matchups. I know they have G5 teams in there a lot. They're going to have another G5 team as well. And then the Sugar Bowl is going to be Georgia versus Indiana versus Notre Dame. We'll see who ends up getting there, but that'll be a fun one, obviously, to finish it off in the Sugar Bowl.
Do you know how they decided where those are? Did the seeds get to put in preference?
I would assume,
because I'm wondering why Georgia chose. If that's true, I'm wondering why Georgia chose the Sugar Bowl over the Peach Bowl.
That is kind of the interesting thing. I have no idea why they picked that one. I don't know if they got to choose or not. It might have just been, pure draw. Maybe they're doing a thing where, certain games get to pick what their matchup is. And, the bowl game itself gets to pick, we're going to get the 1 seed, we're going to get the 2 seed, we're going to get the 3 seed or whatever it is. So I don't know. It's probably going to be a rotating thing as well. I would imagine that, Rose Bowl isn't always going to get that first primary pick for that game. So
What I was thinking of, Garrett, was the fact that Oregon, I believe, would play Texas in the Cotton Bowl. That's what I was thinking, because the
I
Cotton
think
Bowl
the top
is
game
my
is Cotton
final
Bowl.
game.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I was thinking of when I thought Arizona State would have to do that, but it's actually Oregon, who, if Texas took care of business, would have to play the Longhorns in Arlington in the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah.
And Georgia would be in the Orange Bowl. Yeah, the Orange Bowl.
Yeah, it'll be one or the other. I don't know where they would go with that one. I don't know which games get which. Did you see that online? Is it 1-4 is Cotton?
I think I saw that somewhere. Can't verify the source if it's accurate or not, but I do believe I saw that on Twitter yesterday.
Yeah. It's just interesting. Yeah, and then popping up what Alex is saying in the chat. Alex pointing out in the past it has been top seeds. It's just really interesting that Georgia wouldn't pick getting to play in their backyard in the Peach Bowl if that were the case.
Maybe because they just
is there any recruiting angle to this? Like, is there any sort of let's go play this game further in the South? And
I don't think you get to invite recruits.
Well, just that you're getting to play it in their city, and it's you could be a Louisiana kid or a kid from Texas or something that could more easily go to that game. I don't know if that's what it would be. I have no idea what that would be the case. So.
Maybe there's a secret Notre Dame alumni base in Atlanta, and they just want to make it a little bit harder for those guys to.
It's really more about Indiana. Indiana obviously knows
the famous
Atlanta, Georgia. So.
The famous Atlanta alumni base for the Hoosiers. Garrett, let's get out of here on this. I think we can wrap up the show on this. Which game individually, you can pick first round or second round because we can map it out. What has you the most excited about this 12-team playoff bracket?
I think I'm most excited to see the Peach Bowl. I'm really excited to see how that top bracket. I know that everyone's going to make a lot of that second bracket, Tennessee, Ohio State, and then Oregon. Obviously, Rose Bowl is going to be a fantastic game. It's either going to be a rematch or you get Tennessee in there. There's a lot of exciting stuff. But man, I'm excited about the Peach Bowl, man. I'm really excited to watch Arizona State against one of these top teams, Texas or Clemson. There's a lot to be made of that first round game, but whoever comes out of that first round game, I think is going to be a flawed team, a very good team, but a flawed team against a hot Arizona State team. I'm excited to watch.
You mentioned my most exciting one, man. Tennessee, Ohio State, two passionate programs battling for the right to play Oregon, which is kind of silly with this bye week or this bye thing that we've set up, but it is what it is. Potentially a coach with his future on the line, if you believe some that report on the Buckeyes. And Ryan Day, if he loses at home to Tennessee to close out this season, ooh, brother, like it is not going to be good for him.
It'll be a hot time in Columbus.
It absolutely will. I'm really excited about that game. Second for me would be SMU Penn State. I really am interested to see how the Mustangs respond. If they can find a way to play like they did against Clemson in the second half, I think that's going to be a really, really tough game for Penn State. But guys, it's going to get decided on the field. We argued about number 12, the last team in, but way better than arguing about number 4. I think we can definitively say that, seeing this first iteration of the college football playoff bracket. We're going to wrap things up here. The discussion will continue on our midweek shows this week. We've still got a full content calendar throughout December, throughout the rest of the college football playoff, all the way to the national title in late January. So make sure you're subscribed here on the YouTube channel, following along on X and Instagram at 3TechPod. We need to give our sponsors a quick shout out too. We didn't get to do that off the top. Home Field Apparel is our main sponsor. They present this show to you each and every week. Use code 3TechPod for 15% off as you continue your Christmas shopping, and Baller Pickleball as well. Shout out to those fine folks. 10% off when you use the code 3TechPod at checkout at ballerpickleball.com. What a show, Garrett. A lot of fun breaking this down with you. Special thanks to Moose and Tyler as well for joining the show. We'll see you guys really soon. The next show is going to be likely coming out into your feed on Thursday as we kind of dissect this show, dissect this playoff field, and just kind of marinate on it for a couple days before we preview a little bit more and get Mitch's thoughts as well. And also look ahead to some of our first bowl games. We'll have that content out as well. For Garrett Turney, for Moose, for Tyler, for everybody that made this show possible today, I'm Trey Reeves. Talk to you guys really soon.
Gracious him. How about that?